Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Recording this a day later, so normally this podcast comes out on you get it on Wednesday. This week is going to be on a Thursday. As we had a busy schedule, so my apologies for that. But you're going to get it regardless. Of course, this is the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald Quinn, episode 977. On this Wednesday, as we are less than 6 days away, from the election, less than a week. A lot of early voting going on. I'm going to do my early voting tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure, and I'm going to record, by the way, on election night, so you will get the podcast. The results won't be. I might actually. Let me change that. I'm probably going to record next after the election. So I'll probably record on Wednesday. To be honest with you, hopefully the results are in, but it's probably going to be another late week recording just to get the recap, the fresh recap of the election and what could possibly come about with the results. So keep in mind from that standpoint. I'll put out updates via social media and what have you. But as always, we begin with the game of the week. Cleveland shocking the football world and taking out the Baltimore Ravens 29-24. Of course, this game was all about famous Jameis Winston. He comes in, and Cleveland looks like a completely different team. The energy, they looked like they were flying all over the place. The crowd was into it. Players on both sides of the ball played with a energy that we haven't seen all season. It is not a coincidence that Deshaun Watson gets hurt, unfortunately for him, with the Achilles out for the season. And the offense looks like not only an NFL offense, but an above average offense. And without even a big game from Nick Chubb, no Amari Cooper. Okay, remember he was traded to Buffalo. Listen, it goes a long way having a competent quarterback. And the one thing about Jameis Winston, as someone who's followed him since his days at Florida State, being a Florida State fan that I am, unfortunately, Florida State is not the same team this year as they have been when he was there. There's one thing you can say about Jameis Winston. You can say Jameis Winston. You can say a lot of things about him. You can never question his talent. Jameis Winston has Pro Bowl caliber talent. Period. There was never a question about whether or not he could play. He should be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's been miserably inconsistent. Has had some growing up to do, but the guy's talent is not in question. So even though I wasn't expecting him to play at that level against Baltimore, I'm not shocked that he was able to go out there and do what he did. 27-41, 334. They had 401 yards total offense. Again, they going down the field, getting the game-winning touchdown. And again, they were flying all over the place on both sides of the ball. Now, listen, Baltimore did them a favor. Like, if you're Baltimore, you have to actually do what you've been doing that had gotten you to 5-3, 5-2, and that's run the football. Baltimore, for whatever reason, threw the football 38 times and only ran the ball 21 times, which I don't, for the life of me, don't understand what Baltimore was trying to do. That game was a nip and tuck game throughout, so there was no excuse not to run the football. Matter of fact, Baltimore look at the stat line. Baltimore had the ball. I believe Baltimore did control the line of scrimmage as far as time of possession. I'm look this up real quick. Going to the box score. So Baltimore had the football. I mean, it was relatively even. Baltimore had the football 28 minutes, Cleveland 31. So the time of possession was relatively a wash. Um, Baltimore, total plays, 62 plays, 38 rush, 38 passes, 21 runs. That's not how Baltimore's built. Like, Derrick Henry only had 11 carries for 73 yards. So that means he averaged well over 6 yards a carry by my math. Yeah, Derrick Henry, 6.6 yards a carry. So it wasn't an excuse not to run the football. Like that's what Baltimore is running the football at a historic rate. I told you last week they were on pace to break their own record set back in 2019 with well over 3,000 yards rushing. They're on pace to shatter that record. So it's not so much that Cleveland held them to 124 yards total of rushing. Coming into the game, they were averaging 210. They kind of held themselves from that standpoint. And yeah, Lamar Jackson was good, but again, 38 passes, 21 runs. That's not the recipe for Baltimore at all. But the big story about this game was the play again of Jameis Winston and the energy that he brought to that franchise. Now again, Cleveland is 2-6. So the playoffs are still a long shot, but Cleveland is a team that I would not want to play if I were trying to make the playoffs in December. They are going to be. I think Cleveland is going to make a mini run here and win at least 6 or 7 games. They may not get to 500, which I doubt they will, but they're going to be one of those teams that you don't want to see if you're trying to make the playoffs, especially in the months of late November, early into December. There's still a lot of talent on that team on both sides of the ball. They still have one of the best players in football, Myles Garrett. Chubb is going to start, as when it eventually gets cold. I don't know when it's going to get cold. It was 80 degrees today in the DMV, but eventually, as the weather turns, especially in the AFC North, those traditionally cold weather cities of Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. That Chubb and that offensive line will be a factor. And Cleveland will have moments. Cleveland's going to knock somebody out. They're going to knock somebody. They're going to knock a team that's trying to make the playoffs out of the mix. I can see it happening. As far as Baltimore goes, listen, I'm not going to rail on Baltimore that much. Again, it's a divisional game. It was at Cleveland. Cleveland goes out their way to play Baltimore tough. They have no fear of Baltimore. It was an upset, but it wasn't one of those situations where it's not like they physically can't. But Cleveland is a team that Baltimore physically cannot push around. Baltimore can physically push around a lot of teams. Cleveland is not one of them. And Cleveland has never been afraid to live, especially in the last two to 3 years. Is not afraid of is not afraid of Cleveland. Not afraid of Baltimore whatsoever. Well, we'll go fade 4 before we deep dive the playoff picture. So fade 4. We begin with the Hail Mary in DC. Of course, watching this game live as a Commanders fan, the Commanders get a wild 52-yard touchdown pass from Jaden Daniels that gets tipped, and Washington wins 18-15. A game where Washington clearly deserves, from a standpoint of they physically outplayed the Chicago Bears. They physically. The game really shouldn't even came down to a Hail Mary. Washington dominated this game from the terms of line scrimmage. Again, they outgained Chicago 481 to 307. They almost had 500 yards of total offense. This was a win, one of the more gratifying wins in maybe one of the most gratifying wins in a decade for the Commanders, maybe even since Thanksgiving of 2012. To be honest with you, when they destroyed that, went to Dallas and manhandled Dallas, or even later on that season when they put Dallas out the playoffs in a win or go home. Alfred Morris had the big game in a win or go home game. But this was a win of culture. This was a culture win. Jayden Daniels was good. He wasn't great in this game. Still had some lingering effects with the ribs. Washington, squandered a number of opportunities in the red zone. They kept Chicago in it. Chicago offensively couldn't do anything, but defensively, Chicago kept Washington out of the end zone with forcing the field goals. You had a missed field goal. So Washington played a sloppy football game for the most part. They had touchdowns called back. Not a clean performance by Washington whatsoever. But what separates this team from years past is the culture. And it began, of course, with Daniel Snyder, who was one of the worst owners in all of sports, selling the team, being in essence forced to sell the team. You get a new ownership. You get a franchise guy who has franchise talent as a quarterback, and the whole mindset has shifted in the DMV in Washington D.C. with this franchise, and this is really the second culture win of the season. They destroyed Carolina without Jayden Daniels 40-7 in a game that was easily in years past they were lost. They will lose that game. Oh, without their starting quarterback? No, they're going on the road, even against a bad football team like Carolina. They lose that game. In the past, they lose this game. They're 4-0 at home. You know how many times, how bad the Commanders have been at home in the last 15, 20 years, where you had other fans coming from play. And it's not even so much from Dallas. You've had, forget about the national teams, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Green Bay. Even fans from like Tennessee would come in and take over FedEx Field. I know they changed this name of the stadium. I can't get the new stadium name. It's FedEx. I still call it FedEx. But the culture has completely shifted for Washington. Completely shifted. And this, again, they know they have a clear identity. They're going to run the football. We had 168 yards rushing. Now they were out. They were outgained. One of the few times they've been outgained from the rushing department, as Chicago had 202 yards rushing. Big game out of DeAndre Swift, but they more than made up for that defensively by just basically completely shutting down any passing attack Chicago had. Caleb Williams only had 131 yards passing, and most of that came, frankly, in the second half, in the fourth quarter. But then Chicago's good. Like, Chicago that defense is a legit defense. I like Caleb Williams. He, even though the numbers, from a number standpoint, he struggled, but I think he has a potential to be a franchise quarterback, for sure. But that was a franchise win. And again, one of the great feel-good wins that team has had in a long time. And that's what happens when you have a culture, when there's accountability, when you are being told. When was the last time this season that you heard something off the field in regards to Washington? The only thing we've been talking about is football. That's it, football. Not that the owner is involved in this, not no DUIs, none of that bullshit. We've been talking about football. And right now they are 6-2. Now they're headed towards a showdown with Philadelphia. Philadelphia's playing well right now. The Eagles have kind of righted the ship. They had played great against Cincinnati, a Cincinnati team that's dangerous, still has an excellent offense. Went to Cincinnati and beat the shit out of the Bengals. So Philadelphia's playing well. Now, this is not the Philly team that went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but they are playing excellent football right now. So that's going to be a first place showdown, as the rest of the division has completely just fell apart. Dallas and New York are absolutely in the tank. So this is going to be a two team race with Philadelphia and Washington. But that for sure was absolutely a culture win for for the Washington Commanders. Buffalo keeps rolling 31-10 over Seattle. Josh Allen is, I think, to me, the MVP of the league right now. He has completely been carrying that team. Uh, a great road win against a Seattle team that had to be considered how poorly they're playing. Were desperate. It didn't matter. Buffalo goes in there and handles their business. They are absolutely, Buffalo is absolutely in control of that division. And you really think about teams that can get to a Super Bowl. I think, and possibly win a Super Bowl. I think Buffalo is starting to garner some of that consideration, to be honest with you. I'm not going to quite put them at the level of a team that can win the Super Bowl, but they definitely can possibly get to a Super Bowl and challenge in the AFC. 6-2 right now. And that division is over. The Jets, Miami are absolutely in the tank. New England is rebuilding as well. So it's not even a matter of the division. Buffalo, if you're Buffalo, you are eyeing a showdown that's coming up in a couple of weeks against the Kansas City Chiefs and seeing if you could possibly catch the Chiefs for home field advantage. They have the Chiefs November 17th, which would be, again, that could be, depending on what happens with the Chiefs in the next couple of weeks, they could be playing for home field advantage possibly in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks from Sunday. But Buffalo right now playing great football. Looking, again, this is not a vintage Buffalo team from a talent standpoint. It's not. But what they are is they are a collection. They have a superstar at the quarterback position. They have a excellent coaching staff. They have a culture and they have accountability. Again, you've heard no nonsense. It's unfortunate we're having Stephon Diggs with the ACL. You hate to hear that. That's a horrible loss for Houston. We'll talk about that. But Diggs was, there was a lot of planning with Stephon Diggs last season, and they, frankly, have been better without him. I mean, let's keep it a buck. They went out and got Amari Cooper, but they have not missed a beat without Stephon Diggs in a year where many people thought they were going to take a small, if not a major step back. So give Buffalo a ton of credit for how they're playing right now. Speaking of Houston ekes by Indianapolis Colts 23-20. They improved to 6-1 on the season. They keep pace. They keep pace, keeping pace with keeping the Heat on Kansas City as far as best record in the conference and home field advantage. Major loss though, the Diggs loss is a killer. Now again, I know we hadn't been putting they're 6-2, excuse me. So, but they do keep pace with Kansas City, who has in the loss column has a 2-game lead over Buffalo and Pittsburgh, and over Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Houston. But the Stephon Diggs loss is a killer. Nico Collins was already injured. They have been struggling offensively. That is a big time loss for Houston. But they were still able to get the win. Obviously, the story that came out of this game, and we'll be moving forward to next week, is the benching of one Anthony Richardson. Now, again, I'm not going to go crazy about him saying I was tired. Okay, you shouldn't say that publicly. He really was. He shouldn't admit to that. He's what, 22? This is his second year. I'm like, okay, whatever from that standpoint. That doesn't change my opinion of him as a quarterback as far as whether or not he can lead a team. In terms of him saying that, you don't like to hear that. He gets benched for Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco just is one of these veteran quarterbacks. Now again, not too many veteran quarterbacks or journeyman quarterbacks have a Super Bowl MVP and as many regular season and playoff wins as Joe Flacco has. He has an excellent playoff record and a Super Bowl MVP and a Super Bowl win. But Joe Flacco is in the right place at the right time. This was absolutely the right move to make. This will only help Anthony Richardson moving forward. Joe Flacco gives you by far the best chance to win games. And Anthony Richardson, let him sit down, let him learn from Joe Flacco, similar to what Patrick Mahomes learning from Alex Smith, who was a veteran quarterback who won a lot of regular season games and continuously got teams to the playoffs. So I have zero problem with this move. I don't think you're not going to a situation where you're going to lose the quarterback and his psyche. If he can't bounce back from this, then he wasn't your quarterback to begin with. Period, point blank. If he can't, he is clearly the future of the team. Joe Flacco is not. So it's not a situation where like Joe Flacco is like 28. It's not a Kirk Cousins, Robert Griffin situation where you have two guys that are relatively the same age and then you had to make a decision. No, Anthony Richardson is the future for that team. Is the guy for that team. He has a ton of talent. He just needs seasoning as far as he needs film study. He needs to just sit back and just watch the game right now and watch a professional veteran quarterback, at work and just take a step back. Just take a step back. And sometimes, listen, you've had a lot of veteran quarterbacks get benched in the past and be able to bounce back and not, you go back to the 70s with Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw was awful when he first got to Pittsburgh. He was awful. He got benched. They wanted to run him out of Pittsburgh. Okay. So this is not a death knell for Anthony Richardson's career. I think this is the best possible thing to happen for Anthony Richardson. If he is the guy that they think he is, then he'll be fine. But Houston does get the win again, but it's a bittersweet. You lose Stephon Diggs, and that we'll see how they can navigate as they have lost their two best receivers, and we're basically going to be in November. But they are 6-2. They have a little cushion. The division, of course, is not great, and we'll see. And we'll see them probably run the football more, all right, and of course alter their game plan to losing those receivers. San Francisco does what it always does to Dallas. That is beat them 30-24. This game probably should have been that close. San Francisco made it a lot closer than it should have been. And clearly, this is the formula against Dallas. And San Francisco has done this every time they've played Dallas in the last 3 or 4 years is run the football. 36 rushes for 223 yards compared to Dallas, 19 rushes for only 56 yards. Listen, Dak Prescott has been bad this year. I think I'm kind of stating the obvious. And he was bad in this game. For the season, Dak is as 10 interceptions, 10 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. That's not going to get it done. And I think the Cowboys, in terms of the Cowboys, are not going anywhere this year. But that Dak Prescott contract is that is going to be a killer for that franchise moving forward, because not only is he not playing, not only is he not covering for mistakes or covering for areas that they're weak at right now, and no Michael Parsons, the running game is not there. He's hurting the team. He's been bad, and you gave it. Listen, this guy, it is. If you make that mistake, and again, he would have got the money anywhere. So, you could say it's hindsight is 2020 to say he was overpaid. Anybody would have gave him that money, but boy, it seems like we've seen the best of Dak Prescott. Chris Collinsworth had an excellent point during the game. He says that he can't move. He's not moving like he used to. Remember, he was a running threat. Even they would run bootlegs where as a defense you had to defend against him possibly running. Not to the level of Lamar Jackson or say Jay Daniels, but still you still back in the before that injury had to honor Dak Prescott's ability to run the football, and which opened up running lanes for your running backs. That offensive line was much better at that point during that particular time, but he's not moving well. When he drops back to throw the ball, he's not quite a statue, but he's not he's only 30, But he like that injury took some. I think probably took some years off his career from the standpoint of he is pure. He is a purely a pocket passer right now at this stage in his career. And again, right now he's not playing. He's not playing good football. That team again. That team. Their schedule is. They have a. They still have the Commanders. They still, they said. I mean, they have the Eagles. They have a brutal schedule moving forward, and there's no end in sight. Like they could easily in the next 4 games be 1-3, or even possibly even 0-4. Like it's not out of question with Dallas. For San Francisco, they did what they had to do. I wasn't overly impressed with this win. It was fine. They were supposed to win this game at home. You should beat Dallas at home. They match up well with Dallas. That there was nothing about this game that surprised me whatsoever. We'll deep dive the NFL playoff picture. We are basically in November by the time when week 9 kicks off. It will be November. November with the Thursday night football game. There's going to be hard. When they expanded to 14 playoff teams, an extra round back in 2020, we thought that making the playoffs would be not easy, but it would be much easier, of course, to make the playoffs having an extra round and an extra with an extra team with an extra team. It's not going to be easy to make the playoffs this year, especially in the NFC. The NFC you have is loaded at the top. You have 11 teams. 11 teams in the NFC are 500 or better. 5 teams you have 2 or less losses in the NFC. I'm looking at the NFC right now. I'm saying minimum 10 wins. It might take 11, but minimum you're going to have 10 wins to get in. The Eagles are 5-2. They're the 7th seed. Bears are 4-3. They're the 8th seed. You have 3 teams who are at 4-4, 9, 10, and 11, and the Rams are coming. The Rams are playing. They had a big win against Minnesota. They're starting to get healthy. They look. I mean, they look every bit as good as San Francisco does right now in terms of that division. Again, you look at the top of the NFC: Detroit, Washington, Green Bay, Minnesota, Philadelphia, all with 2 or less losses. Falcons had a big win this week to go to 5-3, even though I'm not a believer in them. So the top of the NFC is loaded. And again, you're not going to eke into the NFC at 9-8. That's it. I think minimum 10-7. And look at the AFC. Now, Chargers are 4-3 as a 7th seed. So, Indianapolis is still in the mix. Cincinnati is still in the mix. Forget about Miami. And I don't. Cleveland. Once you get past that, that's not. Those teams are not going to be a factor. So, looking at the AFC, there are probably 9 teams that have a chance to make the playoffs. Probably have 7 spots that are basically. You're gonna have 9 teams vying for 7 spots in the AFC, and again in the NFC, you're gonna have at least, I want to say, about 12 teams vying for 7 spots. And if you want to count the Cowboys, okay, let's say 13 teams. I think the Cowboys are I just don't have no faith in the Cowboys. But let's say for argument's sake, you want to toss in the Cowboys at 3 and 4. They're at 3 and 4. Okay, cool. 13 teams for 7 spots in the NFC. That's how loaded the NFC is right now. Who won the week? Without question, Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman goes out there, homers again for the sixth straight World Series game, which is an all-time record. This is a guy that will probably be in the Hall of Fame. This is somebody that has done nothing but win in his career. Has been on winning teams, whether it was in Atlanta, now with the Dodgers. He is absolutely lighting up the Yankees in this series. Again, 4 home runs in this series. He's going to be like, unless the Yankees come back and win this series, Freddie Freeman is going to be the MVP of this series. Again, I can't take this series seriously until it gets back to Game 6. Dodgers, of course, basically punted with their bullpen and said, "Hey, you can have Game 4. We'll wrap it up in Game 5. We'll see what happens tonight with Garrett Cole." But again, I can't take this series unless it gets to a Game 6. This series is a formality. Dodgers have gotten the great starting pitching, the timely hitting. And it's going to say, and listen, it's, the Yankees, what we're seeing with Aaron Judge has kind of been one of the biggest reasons of what the Yankees have struggled over the past decade in the playoffs. Like Aaron Judge, you think about Aaron Judge for his postseason career. He has 15 home runs. Even with the extra couple rounds of playoffs, that's a lot of home runs for a guy that, it's not like he's been in a lot of postseason games, but he hasn't had like a 15-year career. Like that's still a lot of home runs. But the problem is he's only batting for his career 196 in the postseason coming into last night. And that's why the Yankees have struggled in the postseason, because they've hit all these home runs during the regular season, but in the postseason that doesn't compute because it's too much feast or famine and great pitching. And when you get to the postseason, you're going to see some great pitching. Shuts that down. It shuts that down. So you can have 58 home runs, 62 home runs, and Aaron Judge is not again. Aaron Judge is a great hitter. Like he's not like Adam Dunn or for the Orioles, say Chris Davis, that feast or famine, either home run or bust. No. This guy hit 322 this year, so he can hit the ball. He gets hits outside of home runs, but in the postseason, Aaron Judge's problems have been kind of like I said, the Yankees as an offense outside playing against Houston, which they never have been on the beat in a big spot. They've been exposed for being basically either home run or bust. And because coming into the series, everybody thought that the Dodgers, that Yankees had a decided edge in starting pitching. Like everybody thought that the Yankees clearly had better starting pitching coming into this series. The Dodgers have outpitched the Yankees by a lot in this series prior to last night. It's like he has both reliever, both starting pitcher and bullpen. It's not even been close. And that was supposed to be the Yankees' advantage in terms of the starting pitching. So we'll see what happens tonight as we'll have a Game 5 in New York. Real thoughts, NBA Week 1. Couple things that stood out. Again, Oklahoma City is who I thought they were going to be, undefeated right now, or just smacking people. Had just toyed with Denver last week in the game, but I'm not surprised by that. Had a couple, Phoenix and the Lakers gotten off the relatively fast starts. Everybody's going gaga over the Lakers. I was calm down. It is like I don't, and I'm a Laker fan. The offense definitely is flowing, and please, everybody, let's calm down on the JJ Redick, genius and JJ. Man, the ass kissing of JJ Redick is amazing. And you can tell where it's coming from. The LeBron media people, like that's where it's coming from. Like LeBron, you can say what you want about LeBron, Crutch Sports. I'm telling you, LeBron, in terms of being able to manufacture narratives, not totally control the narratives, but to be able to manufacture narratives and to put out messages and things of that nature, LeBron is a branding and marketing genius. You can say what you want. I mean, we know what he is on the court, but I'm telling you right now, LeBron has control of part of the media. Like if you don't in terms of the messaging. So like Nick Wright, Shannon Sharp, Kendrick to the left, well, it used to be Kendrick Perkins. Not they had a mini falling out, or somewhat of a not falling out, but I don't know if they're as close as they used to be. But LeBron James, Gilbert Arenas, so LeBron James has major influence in terms of the media. Yeah, you can say what you want, like Spring Hill Entertainment, the whole like the podcasting, like this dude, he's playing chess. He's playing chess. You say what you want about him. He is absolutely playing chess. But again, you have to be like 20. You have to give these teams 20 to 25 games before you get a real sense of where they are. I will say this though: Milwaukee and Denver are not the same teams that they were as championship contenders. Those teams have some issues. Those teams have major issues. Now again, both of those teams will make the playoffs. I'm not going to go crazy, but when I look at Milwaukee and I look at Denver, the talent is just not there with those two teams. They're just not. It's very simple. Forget about style of play. Forget about coaching. They just don't have the talent. Like you look at Denver, what Denver was a couple of years ago. You're talking about they haven't replaced Bruce Brown. They haven't replaced KCP. Those are two big losses, and combine that with the fact that Jamal Murray is not the player that he once was. It's just that simple. He's not the player that he once was. You have to bring in Russ. You bring in Russell Westbrook, and I know Westbrook had a relatively a good game last night, but coming into that game last night, he was shooting like 16%. I think he was like 2 for 18 coming into last night. He makes two. He hits 2 3-pointers. It's like, oh, Russ is on fire. Like, yeah, he made just one shot, he'd have been on fire. So Denver's definitely not as talented as they once was. Same thing with Milwaukee. Again, no Chris Middleton. Like Giannis and Lillard are playing well, but the rest of that, look at the rest of that roster, it's just not there. Like they just not, they have some nice pieces, but nice pieces are not beating the Boston Celtics or the New York Knicks. So it's gonna be interesting again. You think about where Milwaukee and Denver were after they won a championship. Milwaukee was favored, probably I think the favorite to win a championship the following year, and maybe they would have if not for the Chris Middleton injury. Lost to Boston in 7. Have not recovered. They haven't recovered from that. All right, okay. Denver again. Last year they won the championship in 23. They came in last year not almost prohibitive favorites, not odds on, but almost prohibitive favorites, and get upset, of course, by Minnesota, and things have like fallen apart quickly with the Denver Nuggets. That is not the same team. I mean, you struggle to be again. Brooklyn, maybe the Brooklyn Nets are improved. Maybe they. I don't know how. Like Brooklyn did. Brooklyn did beat Milwaukee, so maybe they caught Milwaukee at a good time. I know they added Dennis Schroeder, but Brooklyn's not any good. So to allow Brooklyn to you have to go out there basically have a historic game out of Jokic. Jokic drops 29, 18, and 16, which has never been done before. Jokic is just the best player in the world, just a monster. And you had to struggle to beat the Brooklyn Nets in overtime. So those two teams are not the same. Pablo Banchero is going to make he's going to make not first team All NBA. Let me calm down. He will be on the All NBA team this year. Had the 50-point game this week. He right now is averaging 28 on 48% shooting. He has taken a step. You can tell, guys. He's only in his 3rd year. He is took a major leap. Took a leap from his rookie year to last year, and now we're seeing him from the 2nd or 3rd year go to possible, approaching possible superstardom. I'm not going to call him a superstar yet, but he is headed in that direction. He's definitely. I mean, he was an All-Star this year. The next step, of course, is to make All NBA. And again, if he stays healthy, I think he will be on either 3rd or 2nd team All NBA. He's playing that well. And, Orlando right now is playing extremely well at 3-1, but get very, very early in the NBA, NBA season. week 9 for the NFL schedule. It's going to be a big week. If you're an NFL fan, you have so you have Los Angeles at Cleveland now will be very interesting because Cleveland has some fight. The Chargers are in the playoff contention, second. Well, they're a distant second behind the Chiefs, but definitely within are in the seventh spot for the playoffs. Um, Denver at Baltimore should be interesting. Quietly, Denver has played good football. We know Denver has a good defense. I'm still not sold on. I'm not buying stock on both Knicks. We'll see how Baltimore recovers from that from losing to Cleveland. Uh, Detroit, Green Bay. It all depends on Jordan Love. If Jordan Love can play or not. I still would pick Detroit even if he does play. But that's a big time game against Detroit playing as well as anybody in the league. And again, right now, I know I had Green Bay in the Super Bowl, but right now Detroit is without question the best team in the AFC. Like that, let's just call it what it is of how well they're playing. Jared Goff is about one good game away from being really, really considered a top MVP candidate. Um, Tampa Bay, Kansas City could be interesting. Possibly, I know Tampa Bay is banged up, so Kansas City's catching them at a good time. Pittsburgh, San Francisco have buys. So, not, Dallas, Atlanta, not a showdown Sunday week, but a couple of interesting matchups to say the least. I definitely keep my eye on that, especially if Love plays. That Green Bay Detroit matchup will be seemingly the matchup of the weekend. Like I said, the Rams are coming. Like the Rams are absolutely coming. They catch Seattle at a perfect time. I actually expect them to beat the Rams. See me to beat Seattle. Seattle's been awful the last month. So I expect them to handle their business. Handle their business in terms of that game. So we'll see what happens in week 9 of the NFL season. Colorado, one last number I had to let you go. Colorado playing great football right now in terms of the college, ranked 23rd. I'm looking at their schedule, but Colorado could win 9 or 10 games. And I'm telling you right now, they get anywhere close to that, you will see them you will see them on January 1st. I don't think Colorado will make the playoffs because I think there are too many other good teams that'll be frankly ahead of them. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they will get a priority as far as they're on television every week. If you're not noticed, Colorado's on television. They are literally on television every week. So they're going to get top billing, even if they're not in the playoffs. So they're starting to pick up steam again in regards to the Colorado the attention. Again, I know the ratings are not what they were with Colorado last year, but that will change quickly. Trust me. And again, Shedeur Sanders will be a top 5 pick in this upcoming NFL draft. But the bottom line is, Travis Hunter, in terms of the Heisman, they're not. Those two guys are going to cancel each other out. It's just that simple. If those teams, if they had the same record and there was only one of those guys were on the team, then yes, we'd be talking about them as top 2 or top 3 the Heisman Trophy candidates. But they're going to cancel each other out. And Travis Hunter is the one that's playing both sides of the, playing offense and defense. So he's considered to be the more sexier candidate, despite the fact that Shedeur is a quarterback. And again, let's be honest with you. And Deion said this. Deion did say this. There's a faction of the media that doesn't rock with Deion, and maybe Shedeur is paying the price. I think there's something to that. I'm not going to go all the way conspiracy theory into that, but I don't think Deion is all the way wrong with that comment, because Shedeur has played on a high level and he should be getting more Heisman consideration. But again, you're playing on a team with a guy who is considered to be the best player on the team. Point blank, like Travis Hunter is considered to be the best player on the team, and Travis Hunter. Looking at the draft projections, Travis Hunter is in a lot of mock drafts the number one rated prospect in the country. So Colorado again, if they continue to win like this, they're gonna get. They might not get again a playoff berth, but they're gonna get top billing as far as those other bowls, major bowls, with the attention that they garner. That's gonna wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I will see you next time. Go out and vote. Enjoy the rest of your week. So long.